This is massive news. I don't want to waste your time and get straight to the point. The Biden administration is potentially, officially, redesignating the Houthis out of Yemen and putting them on the bad guy list. It starts with the letter T. You can't say the word on here, but this is massive. Now, if you've been wondering why the US military has been extremely patient with the Houthis and almost staying away from them, this is because the Houthis are in a weird classification of they are our enemies, but they're not on the T list or the bad guy list, so let's just look the other way and just stay away from them. However, due to current events and the Houthis, they keep attacking and attacking and attacking, the Biden administration is left at a point where they have to redesignate these guys, put them on the bad guy list, and officially make them enemy number one for the US military. But understand this could cause even more of a humanitarian crisis within Yemen like we've never seen before. Let me explain and let me read you a very scary stat. In 2023, 21.6 million people require some form of humanitarian assistance. 80% of the country's population struggles to access food, safe drinking water, and adequate health services. Now, here's what's even more scary. This stat was worst back in 2016. Let me explain and give you a quick history as to how we were handling the Houthis in Yemen. The Trump administration was put in a weird position where the Houthis were acting up and Saudi Arabia needed some help. And essentially, the Trump administration was left to put the Houthis on the bad guy list. Again, it starts with the letter T. However, there was some cause and effect. Essentially, as soon as we put them on the bad guy list, we were not able legally to essentially help the people of Yemen. Thus, we saw one of the worst and current worst humanitarian disasters we've ever seen on this earth. And so the Biden administration decided when he was elected, he was going to take the Houthis off of the list, and so we could now help the people of Yemen. Again, you need to go back and read how bad these stats were. It's like Biden was also put in a situation of, we are the richest country in the world, we have to help these people. But the issue was this, the Houthis, they were stealing things from the people of Yemen, and every time assistance was going to the people, again, they were stealing it. And it's not like the United States could send pallets of money or food and water and all this stuff. You can even see today in a situation that's not as bad as the Houthis, when you look at Niger, Africa, there are rules and regulations. You cannot just send humanitarian aid knowing it's going to get stolen. There needs to be some precaution. And when the Houthis, they're backed by Iran, obviously they're going to be playing extremely dirty and dispersing or destroying US efforts to help Yemen. Go look into what's happening in Niger. There is a junta there right now, but because of this, since they're not an official government organization, or there's not an actual president that is recognized by the United States and really the rest of the world, that country is also falling into a humanitarian disaster because legally, and countries have laws, they can't help them if there's no president. The same thing is happening with the Houthis. They have most of the military power within Yemen. Now, if you're still sticking with me, you probably are realizing why this is a big deal. I just read you that stat, and if Biden is willing to already call them the T words in other interviews, and the US military is already attacking Houthi targets and trying to take out radar systems, missile systems, it looks like the US military is willing and prepared to up the ante. Now, I'm not saying we're going to get into an all-out war, or I'm not saying, we're going to start this little proxy invasion into Yemen, but what I am saying is, once you do this, the United States is willing to accept the risk that the humanitarian aid might stop and things might get worse for the people of Yemen. This is something extremely critical, and this is something that could backfire on the United States. The United States has a very bad look when going into the Middle East. They are always portrayed as the destabilizers. When the U.S. goes into a country, humanitarian efforts fall, things collapse. And again, it looks like the Biden administration finds himself of like, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. So what exactly are you supposed to do when you have Houthis who are not on the bad guy list? They are your enemy, but you cannot perform all of your tasks from the government, from the military, and use the full force of the US military on the Houthis. What do you do here? When it comes to designating enemies and putting them on the bad guy list, you start to enlist assets from the CIA and a bunch of clandestine government units who could now all work together and use the full potential of looking into Houthi assets. Where are they going? Where are they moving? That is just how the US military operates and the government. I'll give you another quick example. On the US border, the United States government actually wanted to designate the cartel and put them on the bad guy list. Starts with the letter T. You can't say it on YouTube because blah, YouTube. And the main reason why the US government was potentially trying to change the cartel on the bad guy list, again, was to enlist the full potential of the US government, maybe get some more funding and money to help go after the cartel. Again, the US government is still kind of trying to push this, but I'm trying to show you the narrative of once you designate a bad guy group and put them on the bad guy list, the US military categorizes them, puts them on a priority list, and the Houthis again become a massive target, enemy number one for the US military. And Joe Biden is already on record of actually calling the Houthis the T word, the bad guy word. So look, he's saying it. The government knows this. The world knows this. The Houthis have been acting up. And once you go after the world trade, you go after civilian vessels. Even if you are an enemy of Israel, you're going after Greek ships. You're going after ships that have nothing to do with this conflict. They are performing bad guy acts. Now, one thing I do want to say about the Houthis is that they are actually very battle-hardened, and they are well-funded, and they are well-organized. They are not some ragtag fighting group. And the U.S. military and government has given them adequate time to try changing their tune on how they operate within the Red Sea actions. We're talking about a near 2 months of waves of drone attacks, going after civilian ships, going after Navy ships. The U.S. military has been very patient, has not gone after the Houthis, and the second the U.S. military finally goes after the Houthis, you have Iran and the Houthis and Turkey being like, whoa, what are you doing? You're attacking Yemen. You're not attacking the Houthis. So you can see how the narrative is already changing and how the U.S. military already looks bad going after the Houthis over Yemen when you have a terrible humanitarian crisis. So we'll see what happens. I don't want to keep rambling, but this is the current situation. Mark my words. Every single time in U.S. military history, once you designate and put people on the bad guy list, game on. The gloves are off, and we may potentially see an uptick in violence, but we'll also see a decrease in humanitarian aid due to the legality of how things work, which is absolutely terrible, especially when you go and read some more 2023 stats. It is so sad and disgusting. But this is what happens in the Middle East when your country is backed by Iran and the Houthis. They call themselves God's army. They are the chosen ones. They are God's people. This is not the actions of God, might I add. So unfortunately, this is terrible. And we'll see if the Biden administration actually goes through with it. I wouldn't be shocked if they go through with it, but it's going to change the tide of war in the Middle East for sure.